what I'm speaking? Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. I wanted to take the opportunity today to actually step back. The original title of this webinar had been Community Building Through Open Education, but I step back a little bit and give the greater picture of the open education movement, and then talk about community building in that and innovation in higher education. So just to remind ourselves of some of the important trends that are happening in higher education now and how open education fits into this. So this trend, of course, is about demand and access. And around the world, you can see that the percentage of students from each society who are attending post-secondary education has increased. In the 10 years, it's gone from about 18% up now to about 27% of the population who is seeking some type of post-secondary certification or training. And if we look at that in the context of the world's population, which is now about 7 billion, we look at the number of potential students that are out there currently below the age of 15, we see that the number of students that will be seeking education in the coming decades will explode. UNESCO has actually estimated that to be about double what it is now, to 260 million students looking for secondary education by the year 2025. At the more demand for higher education around the world, there's a push for high quality and greater returns. And I'm sure I'm not saying anything that that people here don't already know, that there's a budget happening, particularly at public universities, that universities are seeking for efficiency and for greater quality to students at a lower cost, and they're trying to figure out how to do this without sacrificing high quality. This is that institutions are looking for new markets, they're looking for increased market share, they're looking for efficiency in their operation, and they're looking for higher retention and graduation rates. This is coming from institutions. There's new demographics out there that are seeking higher education. We're seeing the trend towards older students and workers who are looking at education in addition to holding down a job increasing. We're looking at a global market now instead of just a local market, so that institutions are no longer thinking about geographic limits. We're thinking about education, particularly about online education. Just pushing us to think about how do we reach more people, how do we deliver this more effectively, and how do we graduate more students. So with the highest percentage of college graduates in the world as our goal by 2020, we still have a way to go. Right now we're about a little under 40%. And if you look at the statistics, that puts us anywhere between 12th and 15th, depending on who you are. So to get to first, we've got quite a ways to go in just a short period of time. Of student expectations. They're expecting engaging material. They're expecting things to be increasingly digital like the rest of their world. Education to be on demand. They don't necessarily want to have it at a particular time, times a week in a particular classroom. Of course, they want all of this at a lower cost. So for these types of students, they're not just organizing their social world online, but also organizing their educational world online. And actually, a lot of communities are coming up spontaneously, study groups among students who don't otherwise know each other, making use of this technology. But technology also gives us a lot of opportunities to reach different students. Education kind of sits at the middle of a lot of these interesting and powerful trends in higher education. So why is open education important? One is there's a lot of global problems that we have to solve and that aren't easy to solve. Satisfy the demand for higher education by building more institutions and approaching education in a conventional way. Education builds on the already solid base of online and distance education for technology-mediated production, quality education, and a global reach. So I will also give you a little bit more about what open education is. You've probably heard a number of these terms. There are subtle differences. We won't get into too many of those differences, but you hear people talking about open educational resources, or OER, open courseware, open educational practice, open textbooks. This is all part of what open education is. And the main idea of open education is that education is about sharing, and that sharing is important. So if you have knowledge and you share it with somebody, then you can build upon the shared knowledge that you now have. Whereas you have a commodity, say lunch, and you share that with someone, then you have half a lunch. It's not the same with knowledge. And so the whole basis of education is about sharing. It is about building on other people's ideas, and it's about cooperation. The difference between free and open education, and I just wanted to talk about that for a second. So free is no cost, and that education, that's knowledge that people can get by looking at the internet or going to the library. That's all free. Open education is no cost plus permission to modify. So if something is licensed openly, that you can translate that into a different language. You can use parts of it in a presentation. You can take the lessons that are relevant to your students and use them without asking the author first. You can modify any component of that piece to purposes it suits you. So it also has the ability to change cultural lines and be localized to different environments. Just one word about who we are. So we're the Open Courseware Consortium. And with this idea that informal learning could be enhanced by sharing high-quality educational materials. And this is all done legally through the use of an open license. And if you don't know much about open licenses, I encourage you to go to creativecommons.org and read about what that means. They've set up a legal framework for people to be able to give permissions up front about their copyrighted materials. So this to support open education and higher education around the world. We have 300 members. They come from all continents except Antarctica. Collectively, these universities have produced about 20,000 courses that are all openly licensed and available for you to start using today. So you must know who's using these materials and for what. And this presents an aggregated result of surveys done by us and by our members. And we ask, who are you? And so, surprise, a lot of the students using these open educational resources are students. They're in traditional education programs somewhere. But interestingly, some learners who are not engaged in formal education right now and working professionals are about equal with the number of formally enrolled students. So these people are looking for open educational resources are not necessarily engaged in formal education right now. When we ask you use this obviously to supplement their study materials, but people are also using this to update skills and knowledge for work. And then if the largest percentage says they're doing it because they want to learn something, that this is interesting to them. And the age groups are typically around traditional college age, this user group. But what is interesting is if you look at the number of people who are 40, that represents about a third of the people who are using open educational resources from our members. That has a lot of interesting implication for lifelong learning and for new markets of education. So this not as a silver bullet that's going to solve all of the problems that higher ed is facing, but rather as a piece of the formula to what education can be in the future. And we're thinking of open educational resources really as building blocks to innovate in higher ed. And when you start building something new, of course, you want to say, who are you building this for, and what's the purpose? Think about building something new for learners. The obvious questions are, what do learners want, and what do learners need? And increasingly, the answer is not this. It's not bricks and mortar in building, delivering education in a physical location, but the learning pathways. If it's sufficient just to present knowledge, then everybody would be as educated as they wanted to be by virtue of having access to a public library. That's not sufficient, that you need to present people a way through learning so that they can begin in a particular place and end up more knowledgeable about that subject area. I want to, as I'm talking about this, some of the things that are happening outside of the formal education environment. I know that this webinar series is focused a lot about what educational institutions are doing now with online education. So I thought I'd present some of the interesting things that are happening outside of formal education in the open education space. And this is, because it's openly licensed, available for you to use as well. So this is safe.org, and it's set out to pathways through the most popular undergraduate majors in the United States for anybody who wants to access this. So if you went and you clicked on one of these areas, you would get to this, which is their economics pathway. And what we have done then is to build out of an economics degree for graduates, and that includes the core courses that you see at the top and the elective courses that are at the bottom. And they've built these out using mainly open educational resources, and when they couldn't find open, then they've used free. So to click on one of these classes, you get this. It looks very much like a syllabus that you would get in a classroom. It tells you about your learning outcomes, tells you about your requirements, tells you about the course, and each course goes into more detail about what the student has to learn and where they can get their resources, which includes videos and includes lectures and includes information on the web. Learners need interactivity, that people don't learn very well just reading and absorbing on their own. Has started a peer-supported learning community. It's peer-to-peer university. They say you can learn anything with your peers online and totally free. So you can sign up for peer-to-peer university and choose a number of courses, and it really is a very large range. You can see, for example, in this screenshot, you can learn how to program. You can design a game for a city space. You can learn how to write for the web. This is what they have in three-dimensional printing. And the way they've designed their course is not that it's instructor-led, but rather the interactivity comes from interacting with a material. So they've set this up in a series of challenges. And do is go through these challenges step by step, and it gives you the information about where to go on the web to do this, how you learn this, how to interact, and then you build it yourself. So by the time you get through to step 9, been able to design something that could be printed at a 3D printer, put it online in a virtual lab, and actually even send it away to be printed on a 3D printer if you want to. The people who are doing this include mentors, people who know how to already do 3D printing, know how to do all of those steps, and they're willing to be online to answer your questions, to guide you through, help you if you're stuck, and also to evaluate the work that you've done. There's also a cohort of peers who are taking this challenge. They're not all at the same step. They all are going through that same challenge. So again, this is a place where you can click on discussion. You could tell any of these people, has anybody found this? What did you do about that? Do you want to share things? And you post on your discussion board so that you can say, I found this great resource today, or look at this great model that I've developed. And then your peers give you instant feedback, as do the mentors. There's also a list of people who already completed the challenge, so that if you somehow can't get a hold of a mentor, you could ask someone who's completed. And you can do this just by clicking on their icon and sending them a message. That's doing interactivity. This is Open Study. And Open Study does is says, let's create an online virtual study group. Meet people that you will not physically encounter. This is a global group, so this is a mathematics study group. You click on, you start studying. You can study according to a category like mathematics, or a specific category like an open course that you're interested in, or a particular area of mathematics that you're interested in, and pose your questions. And so we'll get on here, they'll ask their questions. One of the peers will answer, or one of the mentors will answer. 75% of the questions that are posed on this site get answered in 5 minutes. And it's worldwide. People are online all the time. So if a student in the US is up at 2 o'clock in the morning and has a particular question, they can go to Open Study, they can ask a question, they will likely get a response, maybe from somebody in Europe, or maybe from someone in Kenya, but they'll get an answer, and they'll have the ability to engage in a conversation around that material they want to. This is, it's called 163.com. What China's done is they're offering their open educational resources through portal sites like Yahoo. So this is the equivalent to Yahoo, and you can click on these or read about the open educational resource, watch the videos, read the syllabi, read the supporting materials, and then you can click on to engage in their Twitterverse, which is called Weibo. And it's 140 characters or less, just like Twitter, and it's surrounded around a particular open course that you see here. And these things sprout up more spontaneously. People ask questions, people get responses. The community is very fluid, so that some people are active at this particular time and other people are active at a different time, come and go. But there's typically about 3,000 people tweeting out one of these courses, asking questions, trying to get insight, basically forming study groups as they go along. Another people need for learning is evidence. They want motivation. They want to be able to show that they've actually learned something. So going Saylor, what Saylor has done is to say we're going to team up with Excelsior College, which has an extensive array of particular subject areas, so that you can take the courses, the open courses, the learning ways that Saylor has put out there, and then you can take an exam from Excelsior College and get college credit for what you studied. This is Education Portal. Education Portal puts a lot of information up on the web about education in general, particularly about people who are looking for higher ed. And they started something called the Education Portal Academy. What they do is put up information and content that is directly related to the CLEP exams, so that students can watch their videos, and then they've completed it. They should have the information that they need to successfully take and pass a CLEP exam, which is $5, and for colleges that accept it, that's 3 college credits for most of these that students can transfer in for a very, very low cost. We've already heard about from the OR University. They are an international network of universities that are accepting credit from people who studied information through open educational resources. If you've taken or you've completed study in a particular area and you feel you have competency, you feel you have equivalency, you might learn at a university. You can go to one of the universities in the OR University network, usually take an exam. If you pass the exam, they get credit from that university. And then the thing that's coming up that I think is quite interesting, this is Open Badges, and this is offered by Mozilla. The Mozilla Foundation that runs Firefox started this with Peer-to-Peer University and with others. And then Badges is that it gives you an electronic token that shows that you've mastered a particular skill or knowledge area. So if you were studying that 3D printing course that I was talking about earlier, at the end you would get a badge for 3D printing. What's interesting about this badge is it's not just a token, but it actually links to the evidence of what you learned. So put to your LinkedIn or onto your Facebook or onto an electronic portfolio, and then a potential employer wants to see, well, okay, the badge in 3D printing, what does that mean? They can click on it and they can see the behind it. They can see your model, for example. They can see the code you wrote that specifically pertains to that badge. And that this is cropping up in a lot of different areas. So people are creating badges not just for content areas, but also for skills. People are giving badges in things like teamwork. So the signals to employers potentially that this person works well with other people. And competency-based education, which is strongly, and SNHU, of course, is active in this area. I believe there's another webinar in a week or so, specifically on competency-based education. So this is the competency pyramids that are being developed by the Department of Labor. What they're trying to do is to put into place the personal competence that you need with the academic competencies and the specific knowledge and skills you have to have in that field to be successful. So, for example, is the renewable energy competency pyramid. And you clicked on science, so it tells you exactly what they mean by competency. And this, of course, makes it a lot easier for you to develop those pathways through materials that will allow you to achieve this particular goal if you wanted to work in the renewable energy field. And approaching it a little bit differently. So when you're on Open Study, which I talked about earlier, you actually get points for asking and answering questions. And your peers and the mentors on Open Study are giving out medals and points to you. And when you've achieved a particular goal, particular score in these different areas, then your competency goes up. And so I give you a rating on teamwork, problem solving, and engagement, which again they say are skills that they're the skills that employers look at that education doesn't necessarily certify. So in this open community, they're trying to give information to people that they share with others about those skills that we saw in the competency pyramid that are on the bottom. What are personal skills that you bring to something? And then your college, they are looking at competency in particular areas through their exams, and they've put together these study guides which point to open educational resources to allow you to prepare to complete their exams and get the credit. SNHU, they've announced that they're starting a competency-based associate's degree in January, $5,000, and drawing heavily on open educational resources to help people master the content that they need to pass. So also that there's the possibility for real disaggregation in higher education using open education practice and open educational resources. So the point is it's not up to the faculty member to do it all. Now faculty members really need to conceive of the course, design the course, execute the course, evaluate the course, figure out how to support the students, evaluate each and every student, and then get feedback so that they can improve their courses. So we have faculty to do that among all of the other things the faculty have to do for many courses a year. This is a lot. This is a lot of work to somebody to do, and it's a lot of work to stay on top of, and also placing a lot of pressure on faculty members that have to reach all of the students in their class with there are, of course, teaching and learning centers and other resources available to faculty, but really onus is on the faculty to provide education for students. We think about these different things that are now available. Faculty don't have to do it all. Faculty can focus on what they're really good at and can perhaps let other things or other people or other groups pick some of those other areas. So that's scary, or is that exhilarating? And some people it's going to be very scary, that this is a different model of education that requires a high level of trust, and that while there is a very strong tradition in education that you can build someone else's scholarship, there's much tradition that you can build on someone else's educational materials. So this is a bit of a culture change for higher education that's to happen, and that also can be quite scary. But on the other side, it's really exhilarating. And one of the things that I find particularly exhilarating is that all of a sudden the whole world is open as a resource. They no longer have to focus on what did you learn, what did you know, what information do you have or do you have access to that you can bring into your class. All of a sudden you have access to information from the world from people that you've probably never met, from other professors at other universities. Exams are available to you from countries that you might never have the chance to go to or study in. These are also out there on the web that you can bring into your classrooms right now. And one that I think is particularly relevant for this group is the management program that Delft University has. So Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, unsurprisingly, has an excellent program in water management. And their sanitary engineering program was looked at by Bandung University in Indonesia, something that was quite interesting. And Bandung was trying to figure out how could we develop a similar expertise. And they decided, well, instead of us developing that expertise, we can use the lectures, the videos, the information that's already up there as theory, frequently offered from Delft. We can send that information to the students in a flipped classroom model, that they can study and master that stuff outside of the classroom. And come into the classroom, we use that time as a lab and a hands-on experience and an opportunity to talk about how do we translate that theory that was presented in a Dutch context into an Indonesian context with a completely different environment and a completely different set of needs around wastewater management. And what they're then doing is taking the experiences that they're having in their classroom around creating new materials in the Indonesian case and put it back into the commons so that else can pick up on that material and use it in their classroom. So it becomes an international conversation around planetary engineering that really wasn't possible until we began to openly share. That question of scary or exhilarating, free is no cost, but free is also freedom. That making advantage of these and participating in open education actually opens up a whole lot of possibilities. And is not just open sharing, but invites an open conversation. And invites you to openly come in, talk to other people, build something new. I want to note a couple of things. If you're really interested in open education, you can learn more and participate in the big Open Education Week that happens. It's online. It's completely free. There are webinars, information, videos, live events. Everything's online. It's all free. It's all open. If you're interested, drop in March and learn more about open education, different programs and projects around the world. And then if you're really motivated, we'd love to have you at our global conference in Bali. This is a national gathering of people who are interested in practicing open education, including policymakers and practitioners. And I wanted with this particular thought that real education is about sharing, that the greatest achievements in education have come by sharing, by building on others' work, by thinking about things collaboratively together. So we'd love for you to think about that in your educational practice. Use open educational resources to share your own educational resources openly with the world. So thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is Sir speaking. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're very faint, John.
Okay. I'll just have you address the question.
Okay. So English is dominant in open educational resources at the moment. Right now we have the Courseware Consortium, as I think represents about 300 universities. There are, of course, other universities who are participating in open education who are not members of the consortium. So with our membership, we have 28 different languages that are represented as far as resources that are available right now. About 45% of that is in languages other than English, so that means that most of it is available in English, but certainly a lot of materials available in Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Spanish, and a number of other languages. So the business models. We get a lot of questions about the business models for open education. So when it started, this started with a big announcement from MIT about 10 years ago that they were going to put virtually their entire curriculum online as open courseware. And to start that off, they sought a lot of grant funding. And so for the initial round of this, it was mainly funded through grants and donations. Now it's really become business as usual for university. So there is, of course, some cost involved generally in the staff department, so that looking at how do you materials up online, paying attention to copyright, making sure that things are copyright clear, that the intellectual property concerns are addressed. So those costs are being absorbed into the university because there are a lot of models that show open education is a viable way for the university to make money. And one examples would be there's a big university in Brazil that has a strong online presence. It's called FGV. And they have about 25 open courses right now. From those 25 open courses, they've generated an additional 4,000 student enrollments by people who have gone through the open course and realized that they could succeed in a formal educational program and have therefore clicked to enroll in a credit version of that program. For us, it's more of a mission outreach engagement. So, for example, Delft University that I had talked about, this ability for them to collaborate with the university that they previously had no contact with in Indonesia, since generated interest in other universities, I should mention. This is something that wouldn't have happened if they didn't make it, if they didn't have Open. And so Open to Delft becomes very important as a way for them to engage with other areas of the world and really for them to advance their own scholarship. The water management people did not have professional contacts in Indonesia, and now this has opened up a whole new area for them to be able to collaborate and do research and bring live examples. So this has been a direct positive impact for the faculty. So MOOCs are a little bit different. They're not entirely part of the open education movement, and that is because of this restriction that John just highlighted. MOOCs are open in the sense that they are open to enrollment, but they're not necessarily openly licensed. Some are, but most are not at this point. So that means that if you wanted to, say, translate the content that was presented in a MOOC, you would have to ask the author. And it's really also presented as an entire piece, so as a course from start to finish, mediated by a faculty member, whereas in educational resources, again, we're trying for that disaggregation and that building block to innovation. So at the moment, a lot of the MOOCs are, the idea is to open access to a lot of people to high quality education that they don't otherwise have access to, that they can enroll in the course, but it really is a course, an entire course, and it's not, the intention is not so much for to become a sharing mechanism as it is for it to become an educational outreach mechanism.
Questions for Mary Lou. Mary Lou, we thank you for your presentation today. It was great. I apologize for our little technical problems starting up today. Hopefully everyone got through that. And wondered anything else to add before we...
I just wanted to call attention to the fact that everything that we do is openly licensed, so that includes all of our presentations. And you saw any slides there that were interesting to you and you wanted to take a look or to use them from presentation, you're welcome to do so. We have a SlideShare account that you can download the presentation from. It's under OCW Consortium.
Great. I did have one more question come in from Peter Sondrig. Would you mind addressing that one? It's on the chat box.
The open textbooks. Yes, so there are textbooks, and then there are textbooks that are being created from OER. And they're two slightly different things. So the open textbook movement is primarily about building, designing a textbook that's similar to textbooks that are available right now, anybody can access and modify under an open license. There are several examples of that. One of them is a statistics course that's being, I think, up by the 20 Million Minds Foundation. It was written by Barlowski. It's got a lot of use, and that's under an open license, so that you as a professor could take that, use any part of it, pull different pieces of it, your own chapters to it, whatever, modify it. And then there are textbooks that are being created from OER, and so you see a number of authoring tools that are being developed and that are out there right now. Actually, BC campus from the University of British Columbia has got an authoring tool in the past couple of weeks, which will allow you to look for open educational resources that are out there. So this may include lecture notes, it could include videos, and you can drag those into an online textbook. So you can create a textbook for a course which includes more than just text and graphs and pictures, but it could include video, it could include links. You can author yourself from looking on the web and seeing what resources are out there that serve your purposes, creating basically a textbook. Can print these on demand, so if they wanted to print out the text parts of it, they could. Several printing companies that will do that for them, usually around $30. Or they can just access it online for free, and it becomes kind of more of a scrapbook collection of how you see your course evolving, which of course means that you can change that out pretty quickly. So if you find different resources, or if you have different topics that you wanted to introduce in a different section, you could actually personalize that textbook for different classes, different sections, different semesters, etc.
Well, I wanted to ask you one general question, just to kind of wrap it up. What the future holds for all this? I mean, it just seems like it's very hard to predict, and you seem to be right in the middle of it. But can you just say something that you think is going to happen in the future that may be, pretty exciting or surprising, perhaps?
It was changing quickly. Came to the Open Courseware Consortium about 3 years ago, and the difference between the things we were talking about then and the things we're talking about now is huge. I think the idea of highly and lower cost and access is driving a lot of conversations. Some of the things that are particularly exciting around these open textbooks. So both California and the Canadian province of British Columbia have announced that they are providing public funding to create open textbooks for the 3 most popular courses that are happening. The state of Washington did that as well. They have something called the Open Course Library. So that includes open textbooks and open educational resources for the 80 most popular courses offered at community colleges in the state of Washington. And this is becoming a clearinghouse, a place where people can go to get teaching materials and to provide different informational pathways for their students. I think this idea of teaching, sharing teaching resources, the same way we share scholarship in higher education, I think that's really beginning to take hold. It still has a long way to go, but I think that once that happens, that we will see a lot more reaching across different institutions with commonalities and with differences, and institutions sharing their strengths with the world, so that people really pursue the kind of education that they want to pursue.
Thank you. Actually, we have one more question that came up. Would you mind addressing that one? We do have some time left.
Sure. So intellectual property. So the questions of intellectual property are complex. So one of the places to start is to look at creativecommons.org, look at their website. So if you created something yourself and you're automatically the copyright holder to whatever you create, you license that under any open license you want to, which means that you can tell people in advance through this open license what permission they have. So they have permission to modify your work, if they have permission to use it commercially, for example. If you always will get attribution, but you can ask that they share any derivative works that they under an open license. There are different ways that you can give people permission in advance. So once you've done that and you put your material out there in a repository, whether it's your institutional repository or whether it's a common repository, it's up to you. Then people can begin to start using your work immediately and editing it, modifying it, doing whatever they want. The question about how faculty get credit for doing this is something that we certainly talk with administrators a lot about, particularly in the tenure formula. So if faculty are looking at how would I want to do this beyond the educational mission of it, and the opportunity perhaps to make new partnerships, questions that comes right down is how does it actually help me advance my career? So the tenure question is important, and that's really a conversation that needs to happen with administrations at different universities. How can we, in a digital age, begin to break out of the idea that traditional publishing is the only way to get credit for actually doing scholarship? Open educational resources is one, writing open access articles is another, and there are, of course, other things that could be brought into a tenure formula that would give immediate feedback to a career. And the other way to get credit for it, of course, is reputational credit. And for faculty, that's huge. Their reputation is really, obviously, really important, both for teaching career at that university and also for their academic reputation universally. So one way is to enhance your reputation. You're sharing high-quality materials, and other people are recognizing it. For example, YouTube views. We have, well, my son, for example, is watching physics videos on YouTube because they're interesting. And this is something, when you see millions of people who are watching educational materials on YouTube, this is great. And this might be a way for us also to say, look, reputation is not only among peers, but it's also among learners, and this is one way to evidence that. The other thing is a little bit what I was talking about with the example, beginning to make connections and having conversations with people who otherwise wouldn't encounter you or wouldn't necessarily encounter your work, may not subscribe to the journals that you're submitting to, probably won't attend the same conferences you do. So opening up these resources and having other faculty see them and recognize them and begin these conversations or begin these interesting creations with you, like the Bandung project, is something I think that also enhances reputation a lot. And being able to show that perhaps to the administrators or to other people who are looking at maybe department chairs, looking at placement, looking at course assignment, looking at advancement questions. I think this all has to come into it. Right now, it hasn't come in very much. So if you have ideas about what we can do to help talk to administrators about that, we would love to much more thoroughly.
We have a question there, Mary Lou, if you could address it from Peter Sondre.
You see that copyright. So one of the things with putting up open educational resources in the best practices, and if you were to our website, you'll see a toolkit which is currently being revised, but there's a lot of information there about best practices around copyright, for example. So obviously we tell people either don't use a copyright image. If you can find an open image that replace that before you make it into OER, so much the better. If you can, then use a link so that people can look at online. OER works just as another educational activity would work, at least under the U.S. copyright laws, and it's different in every jurisdiction. So we have to be careful about talking about this in the global sense. But it would be a takedown notice. So if someone were to be using an image or a graph that was copyrighted, first step would be a takedown notice. And there have been some examples where people have missed a copyrighted graph, for example, in educational materials, and then take down notice and it gets taken out, and it's fine. So there have not been any lawsuits around OER misappropriating copy images at this point. But those are different in different countries, and because this is open, that's a question that we are concerned about and looking at. So if someone take something that would be, say, in fair use in the United States and use it in Burma, would that hold in the country? And those are questions that we are asking different jurisdictions around the world to look at, but but in general, if you are able to clear the intellectual property up front, you're in a much better position. Then you don't have to worry about those downstream uses at all.
We have time for another question or two, if anyone has anything. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for your time and your sharing of all the knowledge you've obtained in the 3 years. It's exciting, and we look forward to see what's going to happen in the future.
Great. Thank you all. Thanks for attending. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thanks, everyone, for attending. Sorry about the little glitch to start. This is John Slater signing off. Thanks.